Ethan Carter was not the kind of man who believed in ghosts, conspiracies, or strange coincidences. He was an engineer, a man of logic and facts. But for the past few weeks, something had been bothering him. Something he could not explain. He was being followed. It started as a feeling. That prickling sensation on the back of his neck when walking home from work. The slight movement in his peripheral vision when he turned a corner. He ignored it at first, blaming his long shifts and lack of sleep. But soon, the evidence became too clear. Everywhere he went, he noticed the same hooded figure in the distance, whether he was buying food at the market, fixing a satellite relay, or relaxing at the colony's main square. The figure was always there, silent, watching. Titan Colony was not a big place. It was a mining and research outpost, one of humanity's first real steps beyond Earth. Most of its residents were scientists, engineers, and corporate workers. Strangers stood out, and yet no one else seemed to notice his stalker. One night, Ethan decided he had enough. It was late, and the colony's streets were quiet. Titan's thick clouds hung above, giving the artificial lights an eerie glow. Ethan walked slowly, pretending not to notice, but his mind was racing. He could hear the soft footsteps behind him, matching his pace. He turned a sharp corner into a dark alley and pressed himself against the wall. The moment his pursuer passed, he struck. With a swift movement, he grabbed the figure's arm and pulled them into the alley, slamming them against the metal wall. "All right, enough games. Who are you, and why are you following me?" The figure didn't resist. Instead, a soft, almost amused voice replied, "You're more observant than I expected, human." Ethan's grip tightened. Human. The voice was definitely feminine, but there was something strange about it. Too smooth, too precise. Before he could react, the figure moved, faster than any normal person should. In an instant, Ethan found himself pinned against the wall instead, his own wrist twisted behind his back. "I mean no harm," the voice continued, "but you are in danger." Ethan gritted his teeth. "You expect me to believe that?" The figure hesitated for a moment, then slowly pulled down the hood. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She was not human. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, almost shimmering under the dim light. Her eyes, glowing violet, studied him with an intensity that made his heart pound. Strange markings ran along the sides of her face, glowing faintly. Her features were sharp but undeniably beautiful, almost too perfect. "You?" Ethan stammered. "What are you?" The woman released him and took a step back. "My name is Ziyara," she said, "and I've been watching you because your life is at risk." Ethan rubbed his wrist, still trying to process what he was seeing. Risk? From who? Ziyara's expression darkened. Powerful forces, ones that do not want humanity to advance. Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "Listen, lady. Ziyara, whatever your name is, I'm just an engineer. I fix things. Why would anyone care about me?" Ziyara's glowing eyes narrowed. "Because you built something, Ethan Carter. Something important, and they will come for it. And for you." Ethan's mind raced. He had worked on many projects, but nothing secret or dangerous. Just energy systems, mining equipment, and his stomach dropped. The prototype. A few months ago, he had worked on an experimental energy core for Titan's mining rigs. It was supposed to increase efficiency, but after strange test results, the project was quietly shut down. He never knew why. Ziyara seemed to read his thoughts. "They erased your project from the records, didn't they?" Ethan took a step back. "How do you know that?" "I know because it was never about mining," Ziyara said. "That core you built, it produces an energy signature unknown to the galaxy, something humanity wasn't supposed to discover yet." Ethan's head spun. This was crazy. He had spent his whole life working for corporations, designing technology. And now, an alien was telling him his work had put him in danger. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered. Ziyara stepped closer. It will, soon enough. Before Ethan could respond, a distant explosion shook the ground. The colony's alarms blared to life. People started shouting in panic. Ziyara's expression turned serious. They're here. Ethan's blood ran cold. Whatever was happening, whatever this woman, this alien, was trying to warn him about, it was already too late. The ground shook beneath Ethan's feet. The explosion had come from the colony's security outpost, and now alarms screamed through the night. People ran in all directions, panic spreading like wildfire. Ethan turned to Ziyara. What's happening? Ziyara's glowing violet eyes scanned the horizon. They've arrived. Another explosion rocked the colony. The power flickered, and the streets went dark. Emergency lights cast a dim red glow over the buildings, making everything look like a battlefield. Ethan's heart pounded. This wasn't a random accident. Someone had attacked Titan Colony. And somehow, Ziyara knew this would happen. Who are they? He demanded. Ziyara grabbed his arm. No time to explain. We need to move. Now. She pulled him forward with strength Ethan never expected. He barely managed to keep up as she weaved through the chaotic streets, avoiding the panicked colonists. A loud hum filled the air. Ethan looked up just in time to see dark shapes descending from the sky. Sleek, triangular ships, their black hulls reflecting the colony's emergency lights. Then the shooting started. Blasts of green energy rained down from the ships. Explosions tore through the streets, sending debris flying. Ethan ducked behind a metal crate as a pulse of energy struck the ground near him. What the hell is going on? He shouted. Ziyara crouched beside him, her glowing eyes locked onto the approaching enemy. They are the Sindari. Ethan's mind raced. He had never heard of them. Aliens? Ziyara nodded. An empire that operates in the shadows. They don't conquer planets with armies. They erase civilizations before they become a threat. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. And they think humanity is a threat. No, Ziyara said. Not humanity. You. Ethan stared at her. Me? That's ridiculous. I'm just an engineer. Ziyara's expression was serious. The prototype you built, its energy signature is unlike anything in the known galaxy. If humanity masters it, you will leap forward thousands of years in technology. The Sindari won't let that happen. Ethan's stomach twisted. He had built that prototype months ago. He had thought it was just another mining tool, nothing special. But now he was being hunted for it. A sharp whine filled the air. Ethan turned just as a Sindari soldier landed a few feet away. The creature was tall, covered in sleek, black armor that shimmered in the dim light. Its face was hidden behind a smooth helmet, and a strange, glowing weapon was clutched in its clawed hands. The soldier raised the weapon. Ziyara moved like lightning. She launched forward, her body twisting midair. A curved blade extended from her wrist, glowing with blue energy. With one swift motion, she struck. The Sindari soldier barely had time to react. Ziyara's blade sliced through its weapon, then its armor. The alien collapsed to the ground, motionless. Ethan's jaw dropped. Ziyara turned to him. Move. He didn't argue. They sprinted through the colony, weaving between burning buildings and fallen debris. Ethan's lungs burned, but he pushed forward. He had no idea where they were going. He only knew that stopping meant death. More Sindari soldiers landed around them. Ziyara moved like a blur, her blades flashing through the darkness. She fought with impossible speed and precision, cutting down enemies before they could fire a single shot. Ethan had never seen anything like it, but there were too many. For every soldier Ziyara took down, more appeared. The Sindari were closing in, surrounding them. Ethan knew they couldn't keep running forever. Ziyara must have realized it too, because she suddenly changed direction. This way. She dragged him toward a maintenance hatch on the side of a building. With a quick motion, she pried it open and shoved Ethan inside. She climbed in after him, sealing the hatch behind them. The tunnel was dark and narrow. Ethan struggled to catch his breath. "Where are we?" "A service tunnel," Zayara whispered. "It leads to the outer sector. We can escape if we move quickly." Ethan leaned against the cold metal wall. His mind was still reeling. "Why are you helping me?" Zayara hesitated. "Because I owe your kind a debt." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Zayara didn't answer. Instead, she peeked through the hatch's small window. Outside, Sindari soldiers scoured the area, searching for them. Ethan swallowed hard. His life had changed in a matter of minutes. He had gone from being a simple engineer to being hunted by an alien empire. And now his only ally was another alien, one who fought like a warrior and knew more than she was telling him. He had no choice but to trust her. Zayara turned back to him. "Stay quiet and follow me." Ethan nodded. He had a feeling this was only the beginning. Ethan followed Zayara through the dimly lit maintenance tunnel, his breaths coming in short gasps. The cold metal walls vibrated slightly, carrying the distant echoes of destruction above. The colony was under siege, and he was being hunted. The tunnel stretched forward in darkness, the only light coming from Zayara's glowing violet eyes. She moved quickly, her steps silent, while Ethan struggled to keep up. "What's the plan?" he whispered. "We need to reach the outer sector," Zayara said. "There's a transport hub. If we get there, we can escape." Escape. That sounded good. But Ethan's mind was filled with questions. He was just an engineer, yet an alien empire wanted him dead. And now, an alien woman, who had been following him for weeks, was his only hope of survival. They turned a corner. Zayara suddenly raised a hand, signaling him to stop. Ethan froze. Up ahead, faint blue lights flickered. Sindari patrol drones. "They're scanning the tunnels," Zayara whispered. "We need to be careful." Ethan's heart pounded. If the drones spotted them, they wouldn't stand a chance in this narrow space. Zayara crouched down and pulled a small metallic device from her belt. She pressed a button, and it emitted a soft pulse of energy. "What is that?" Ethan whispered. "A disruptor," she replied. "It will confuse their sensors. Buy us a few seconds." The drones floated closer, their mechanical eyes sweeping the tunnel. The air was tense. Ethan held his breath as the machines hovered just meters away. Then, the drones hesitated. Their lights flickered, and they suddenly turned around, drifting back the way they came. Ethan let out a breath of relief. Zayara put away the disruptor. "Come on, we don't have much time." They moved quickly, passing through old storage chambers and abandoned service corridors. The tunnel system beneath the colony was vast, but Zayara seemed to know exactly where she was going. Ethan had to ask, "How do you know these tunnels?" Zayara hesitated, then said, "Because I've been preparing for this." Ethan frowned. "Preparing? You knew they were coming." She stopped walking and turned to him. "I knew the Sindari wouldn't allow you to live. That's why I was watching you." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Why? Why do they care about me?" Zayara took a deep breath. "Because of the device you created, your prototype. You don't understand its true potential." "It was just a power generator," Ethan said, confused. "A new way to extract energy from unstable minerals." Zayara shook her head. "No, your design creates an energy field unlike anything seen before. If refined, it could power entire worlds or destroy them." Ethan felt a chill. "Destroy." Zayara nodded. "The Sindari see every new technology as either a weapon or a threat. They decided yours was both." Ethan's mind raced. He had only been trying to improve mining operations, not create something dangerous. But if what Zayara said was true, then his invention was worth killing for. A sudden metallic clang echoed through the tunnel. Ethan and Zayara tensed. Footsteps. Heavy, armored footsteps. "They found us," Zayara whispered. She grabbed Ethan's wrist and pulled him into a side passage. They pressed against the wall, barely breathing. A squad of Sindari soldiers marched past the tunnel entrance, their armor gleaming under dim emergency lights. Their strange rifles hummed softly as they scanned the area. Ethan's pulse raced. One wrong move, and they were dead. The soldiers paused. One of them tilted its helmet slightly, as if listening. Ethan clenched his jaw. Then, the soldiers continued down the main tunnel. Ziara waited a few seconds before whispering, "Move. Now." They slipped through the passage and hurried forward. The tunnel sloped upward, leading toward the surface. Suddenly, Ziara stopped. Ethan nearly bumped into her. "What now?" he asked. She pointed ahead. A large security door blocked their path. Its panel was blinking red, locked. Ethan stepped forward. "I can hack it." Ziara nodded. "Do it fast." Ethan pulled a small tool from his belt and pried open the control panel. Wires sparked as he worked, bypassing the security protocols. Ziara stood guard, blades in hand. "Hurry." Ethan's fingers flew over the interface. The colony's security was tough, but he knew the system inside and out. A warning beeped on the screen. "Security breach detected." Ethan cursed. "They know we're here." "Then move faster," Ziara said. He bypassed another firewall, forcing the system to unlock. The door let out a heavy click and slid open. Ziara grabbed his arm and pulled him through just as an alarm blared behind them. They emerged in an old warehouse near the outer sector. It was dark, abandoned, and eerily quiet. Ethan turned to Ziara. "Now what?" Ziara exhaled. "We find a ship, and we run." Ethan glanced back at the tunnel entrance. The Sindari wouldn't stop. They would hunt him until he was dead. He took a deep breath. His normal life was over. Now survival was all that mattered. Ethan and Ziara stood in the dark, abandoned warehouse. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of old metal filled his nose. Somewhere outside, alarms blared, and the distant hum of Sindari patrols sent chills down his spine. "We can't stay here," Ethan whispered. Ziara nodded. "There's an old transport dock at the back of this sector. If we're lucky, there's still a working ship." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Just hours ago, he had been an ordinary engineer, working on power generators. Now he was a fugitive, running from an alien empire that wanted him dead. "Let's go," Ziara said, leading the way through the shadows. They moved quickly, staying low, avoiding open spaces. The warehouse was filled with rusted crates and old machinery, perfect for hiding. As they approached the exit, Ziara suddenly stopped. Ethan almost bumped into her. "What is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she motioned for him to stay silent. Ethan listened. Then he heard it. A faint, mechanical clicking sound. Ziara's eyes narrowed. Drones. A red light flickered from the upper walkway. A Sindari scout drone hovered there, scanning the area. Ethan's stomach tightened. If it saw them, it would alert the soldiers. "We need to destroy it," Ziara whispered. Quietly. Ethan looked around. His eyes landed on an old metal pipe near his feet. Ziara nodded as if reading his mind. Slowly, carefully, Ethan picked up the pipe. He took a deep breath, then hurled it toward the far end of the warehouse. The pipe clattered against a stack of crates. The drone reacted instantly, turning toward the noise. Its sensors beeped as it scanned the area. Ziara moved like lightning. She leaped up onto the walkway, her movements silent as a shadow. Before the drone could react, she grabbed it, twisted its mechanical neck, and yanked out its power core. The drone went limp. Ziara tossed the broken machine aside and dropped back down. Ethan exhaled. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." Ziara smirked. "Let's move." They slipped through the exit and into the dark alleyways of the colony's outer sector. The streets were empty, abandoned. Most civilians had fled when the Sindari arrived. Now, only shadows remained. Zayara led Ethan through a maze of back streets. She moved with confidence, like she had done this before. Ethan couldn't hold back his questions anymore. "Who exactly are you?" Zayara glanced at him. "I told you. I'm trying to save your life." "That's not an answer," Ethan said. "You know too much. You fight too well. You're not just some random person." Zayara hesitated. Then she sighed. "I was a Sindari agent once." Ethan's eyes widened. "What?" "I worked for them. Long ago," she said. "But I saw what they truly were. I saw what they did to people like you. Brilliant minds who became threats in their eyes." Ethan swallowed. "And now they want me dead." Zayara nodded. "I left the Sindari Empire years ago. I couldn't be part of their cruelty anymore. When I heard about your invention, I knew what they would do." Ethan felt a strange mix of fear and gratitude. She had been following him, watching him, because she wanted to protect him. "I don't know if I should thank you or be terrified," he admitted. Zayara smirked. "Do both." They reached the transport dock. It was a massive open space filled with abandoned ships. Some were rusted, others half dismantled. The place had been unused for years. Zayara scanned the area. "There," she pointed. A small freighter sat at the far end, covered in dust, but mostly intact. Ethan's heart lifted. "Can you fly it?" Zayara nodded. "I've flown worse." They sprinted toward the ship. Halfway there, a loud boom shook the ground. Ethan turned. His blood ran cold. Sindari soldiers poured into the dock, their weapons glowing blue in the darkness. "They found us," Zayara said. A voice echoed through the docking bay. "Surrender the human. Now." Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The Sindari commander stood at the entrance, his black armor shining under the dim lights. His glowing blue eyes locked onto Ethan. "You cannot run," the commander said. "Give up, and your death will be quick." Zayara pulled out her blades. "Keep them busy," she told Ethan. "I'll get the ship running." Ethan's mind screamed how. But there was no time to argue. The soldiers raised their weapons. Zayara charged. Ethan ducked behind a stack of crates as blue energy blasts lit up the dock. Zayara moved like a blur, dodging, striking, taking down soldiers one by one. But there were too many. Ethan knew she couldn't hold them off forever. He had to do something. His eyes darted around, searching for anything useful. His gaze landed on an old power terminal nearby. If this place still has power. He ran to the terminal, yanked open the panel, and started working. The system was ancient, barely functional, but Ethan was an engineer. He made things work. As Sindari soldiers advanced, he found the emergency override. He activated it. A loud warning siren blared through the dock. Emergency lockdown initiated. Massive steel blast doors slammed shut, trapping most of the soldiers outside. Ethan grinned. That should slow them down. Zayara fought off the last soldier near the ship and shouted, "Get inside." Ethan sprinted toward the freighter. Zayara was already at the controls, flipping switches. The ship hummed to life. The Sindari commander growled in frustration. He aimed his rifle. Ethan felt the heat of the energy blast rush past his head as he leaped into the ship. Zayara hit the thrusters. The ship lifted off, engines roaring. The Sindari fired, but it was too late. They were airborne. Ethan collapsed into a seat, heart racing. Zayara smirked. "Told you I could fly it." Ethan laughed breathlessly. "Next time, let's leave before we get shot at." Zayara smiled. "Where's the fun in that?" As the ship blasted into the sky, Ethan looked out the window. The colony shrank beneath them. He had lost everything. But he was alive. And now, the real fight was about to begin. Ethan gripped the sides of his seat as the freighter roared through the planet's upper atmosphere. Outside the window, clouds parted, revealing the deep black of space. His heart pounded, but they had done it. They had escaped. Or so he thought. A loud alarm blared in the cockpit. Incoming hostiles, Ziyara shouted, her hands flying across the controls. Ethan turned to look at the scanner. 3 Sindari fighter ships had locked onto them, closing in fast. His stomach twisted. I thought we lost them. They must have tagged the ship before we took off, Ziyara growled. They can track us. Ethan clenched his fists. Of course, the Sindari were an advanced empire, and they weren't going to let him go that easily. Ziyara pulled the ship into a sharp turn, and Ethan was nearly thrown from his seat. The freighter wasn't built for combat. It was an old transport vessel, slow and heavy. Meanwhile, the Sindari fighters were sleek, fast, and armed to the teeth. We need a plan, Ethan shouted. Working on it, Ziyara responded. She twisted the controls, sending the ship diving into an asteroid field just outside the planet's orbit. The Sindari fighters followed, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness. Ethan's hands shook as the ship rocked from near hits. Sparks flew from the control panel. We can't outrun them like this, Ethan yelled. Then we won't, Ziyara said, eyes sharp with determination. We'll outsmart them. Ethan swallowed. How? Ziyara pointed to the scanner. There's a debris field up ahead. A bunch of old wreckage from past battles. If we get inside, we might be able to lose them. Ethan nodded. Do it. Ziyara yanked the controls, sending the freighter spiraling into the wreckage zone. Broken ships, shattered metal, and floating debris filled the space around them. Ethan held his breath as they weaved through the wreckage, dodging massive chunks of destroyed vessels. The Sindari fighters followed, but they weren't as careful. One of the fighters clipped a large piece of metal. It spun out of control before smashing into an asteroid, exploding in a brilliant blue fireball. Ethan grinned. One down. Ziyara didn't answer. She was focused, her eyes locked onto the chaotic mess of wreckage ahead. The second fighter was still closing in. Ethan, Ziyara said suddenly, I need you to go to the engine room. There's a manual override for the heat vents. If we release a heat burst, it might blind their sensors. Ethan's mind raced. Are you sure that'll work? It's better than waiting to be shot down. Ethan didn't argue. He unbuckled his seat and ran down the corridor, gripping the walls as the ship rocked from another near hit. Reaching the engine room, he scanned the control panel. The words heat vent override flashed on the screen. He took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. He slammed the button. A loud hiss filled the ship as a massive wave of superheated gas burst from the back of the freighter. The Sindari fighter flew straight into it, its sensors overloaded. The ship veered off course and smashed into a derelict battleship. Another explosion rocked the debris field. Ethan cheered. It worked. He raced back to the cockpit. Ziyara flashed him a quick smile. Nice job, engineer. Ethan collapsed into his seat, breathing hard. Please tell me that was the last of them. Ziyara's smile faded. Ethan followed her gaze to the scanner. A massive red dot appeared on the screen. Something big was coming. A deep voice crackled over the ship's comm system. You cannot escape, human. Ethan's blood turned cold. He recognized that voice. The Sindari commander. Ziyara's hands tightened on the controls. They brought a warship. Ethan stared out the window. From the darkness of space, a colossal Sindari cruiser emerged, its massive form blocking the distant stars. Dozens of gun turrets turned toward their tiny freighter. Ethan's heart pounded. They had survived the chase, but now they were trapped. Ethan stared in horror at the colossal Sindari warship that had appeared before them. The dark, metallic beast stretched across the void, its glowing red lights like the eyes of a predator. Dozens of plasma cannons pointed directly at their tiny freighter. We're trapped, Ethan whispered. Ziyara's jaw tightened. Not yet. A voice crackled over the comm system, deep and full of authority. Human, surrender now. You cannot escape. Ethan's heart pounded. He recognized that voice, the Sindari commander. Ziyara gripped the controls. Ethan, get to the weapons console. Ethan blinked. We don't have weapons. She shot him a look. Just trust me. He scrambled to the console on the side, searching for something, anything, that could help. The freighter wasn't built for combat, but maybe Zayara had a plan. The warship's turrets started glowing, ready to fire. This is your last warning. Surrender or be destroyed. Ethan swallowed hard. What's the plan? Zayara's fingers flew across the controls. We're going to do something crazy. The warship fired. A massive plasma blast shot toward them. Zayara spun the freighter at the last second. The energy beam grazed past, rocking the ship violently. Alarms blared. Sparks flew from the console. Ethan held on. That was close. Zayara smirked. Too slow, Sindari. She yanked a lever. The ship lurched forward, straight toward the warship. Ethan's eyes widened. Are you insane? We can't fight them. We're not fighting. Zayara grinned. We're crashing. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What? The freighter accelerated, heading directly for the Sindari warship's hull. The commander's voice roared over the comms. Stop immediately. You will be destroyed. Ethan braced himself as Zayara pulled another lever. At the last moment, the freighter dropped downward, skimming just beneath the warship. Hold on, Zayara shouted. She pressed a button. Cargo hatch, open. The ship shuddered as they dumped all their spare cargo into space. Metal crates, fuel canisters, and wreckage smashed into the warship's underside. The sudden debris cloud scrambled the enemy's targeting systems. Ethan clenched his fists. That actually worked. Zayara grinned. Told you I had a plan. But it wasn't over. The Sindari warship adjusted course, its massive cannons charging up again. Ethan's stomach twisted. They're not letting us go. Zayara's smirk faded. No, they're not. She glanced at the scanner, eyes narrowing. There. She pointed. A nebula loomed ahead, swirling with strange energy clouds. Ethan's eyebrows furrowed. A gas cloud. Not just any gas cloud. Zayara's voice was sharp. That's a dark matter nebula. If we go in, they can't track us. Ethan's breath caught. Isn't that dangerous? Zayara shot him a look. More dangerous than getting blown up. Ethan groaned. Good point. Zayara pushed the thrusters to full power, steering them toward the glowing nebula. The warship fired again. A plasma blast grazed the ship's side. The hull screamed as metal tore. The freighter shuddered. Warning lights flashed red. Ethan gritted his teeth. We're not gonna make it. Zayara's fingers flew across the controls. Yes, we are. Another blast fired. Direct hit on the engines. The ship jerked violently, sending Ethan flying. He slammed against the wall, gasping. Zayara cursed under her breath. Engines failing. Ethan crawled to the console, his hands moving on instinct. He was an engineer. This was his moment. Keep us steady, he shouted. He pulled up the emergency systems. The ship's power grid was failing. But there was one last trick. The backup thrusters. They weren't built for speed. But if he rerouted all remaining power, he slammed the override button. The ship surged forward, just enough to pierce the nebula's edge. The Sindari warship held back, hesitating at the nebula's entrance. Ethan's head spun as the ship entered the strange cloud. Everything went dark. The scanners flickered out. Even the stars disappeared. It was like falling into a void. Ethan's breath slowed. Did we escape? Zayara let out a long breath. For now. She looked at the failing systems. But we're not safe yet. The ship's barely holding together. Ethan nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Then let's fix it. Zayara met his gaze. A small, grateful smile crossed her lips. They weren't out of danger. But for the first time, they had hope. Darkness surrounded the ship as it drifted deeper into the nebula. The scanners flickered uselessly, unable to penetrate the dense energy field. Even the distant glow of stars had disappeared. Inside the freighter, Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over Ethan and Ziyara. Sparks fizzled from the damaged consoles, and the entire ship groaned as if struggling to hold itself together. Ethan wiped sweat from his forehead. How bad is it? Ziyara checked the status screens, frowning. Engines are fried. Life support is running on backup power. Shields are gone. Ethan swallowed hard. So we're stranded. Not yet. Ziyara's golden eyes gleamed with determination. We just need to fix the ship before the Sindari find another way to track us. Ethan nodded. This wasn't over. He pushed himself toward the engine bay, moving quickly despite the flickering lights and shaking floor. Inside, the damage was worse than he had feared. The main engine core had taken a direct hit. Wiring hung loose, some of it still sparking. He let out a breath. I need time to fix this. Ziyara's voice came over the comm. We might not have time. Ethan froze. What? I'm picking up something in the nebula. Her voice was tense. I don't know what it is, but it's moving. Ethan's stomach twisted. If the Sindari had found a way to track them, they were dead. Keep an eye on it, he said. I'll work as fast as I can. The clock is ticking. With shaking hands, Ethan grabbed a toolkit and got to work. He ripped open a panel and started reconnecting the power relays. The ship trembled as another system failed, and for a terrifying moment, the lights flickered out completely. Ethan. Ziyara's voice cut through the darkness. I'm on it, he yelled, twisting a wire into place. A second later, the lights flickered back on. Ziyara exhaled over the comm. Good work. But that thing is getting closer. Ethan gritted his teeth. Almost there. He worked faster, his fingers moving on instinct. Fuel lines, energy conduits, thruster recalibrations. He worked through it all, pushing past exhaustion. Finally, the engine's core hummed to life. Ziyara, try it now. The ship shuddered, then roared as the engines reignited. Ziyara whooped. That's what I'm talking about. Ethan allowed himself a grin. Told you I'd fix it. But their celebration was cut short. A shadow passed outside the viewport. Something huge. The hunter in the dark. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. What was that? Ziyara's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the ship lurched violently. Ethan crashed against the wall as the whole vessel shook. Something just latched onto us, Ziyara shouted. Ethan scrambled to the nearest screen, but the scanners were still blind in the nebula. Then a deep metallic screech echoed through the ship. Ziyara swore. That's not Sindari. That's something else. Ethan's heartbeat pounded. Something else. The screeching continued, metal scraping against metal, like claws digging into the hull. Ethan grabbed a plasma torch. I'm going out there. Ziyara's eyes widened. Are you insane? If something's on our ship, we can't just sit here. Ethan set his jaw. Cover me from inside. She hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. Face to face. Ethan climbed through the emergency hatch onto the ship's exterior. The nebula swirled around him, shifting like living shadows. He activated his suit's magnetic boots and took slow, careful steps. Then he saw it. A dark shape clung to the hull. It was huge, almost as big as the ship itself. Its body was covered in metallic plating, with long, spindly limbs ending in razor-sharp talons. And its eyes, glowing red orbs, were staring straight at him. Ethan's breath caught. It moved. The creature lunged. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding a swipe from its talons. Sparks flew as the claws ripped through the hull. He didn't have a weapon, just his plasma torch. Ziyara, he shouted. I need firepower. Hold on, she called back. The creature lunged again, this time faster. Ethan rolled to the side, gripping onto the ship's frame as the thing's claws barely missed him. Then, boom! A plasma blast slammed into the creature's side. Ziyara had fired the ship's emergency turret. The beast shrieked, releasing its grip on the hull. Ethan saw his chance. He threw the plasma torch, and it ignited as it hit the creature's chest. A bright explosion erupted, sending the creature tumbling into the void. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Ziyara's voice came through. "Get back inside. Now." Ethan didn't argue. The final escape. Once he was inside, Ziyara wasted no time. She fired up the engines and blasted them out of the nebula. They burst into open space, leaving the dark storm behind. No warships followed. No strange creatures lurked in the shadows. For the first time, they were free. Ethan slumped into a chair, exhausted. Ziyara let out a shaky laugh. "You are one crazy human." Ethan chuckled. "Takes one to know one." For a moment, they sat there, catching their breath. Then Ziyara turned to him, a serious look in her eyes. "So, where do we go now?" Ethan thought for a moment, then smiled. "Anywhere we want." The end.